Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Influence Hour. I'm your host, Kenyo. Influence Hour is your news, culture, editorial show. You know, we like to talk about important social issues. Today, I have a very special presentation for you. We have some guests from the Liberated Lotus Collective. The Liberated Lotus Collective is it's a community collective in Austin, here where the studios of AFTV 5R. And the first guest that we're going to have from Liberated Lotus Collective is, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Okay. I am Gavin, and I guess I would say I ended up here because I'm on a mission to make a change. And it seems like the people I need to be around and the places that I need to be in order to make that happen.
Awesome. So, Liberated Lotus Collective is having ongoing promotions as they get ready for their first event, the Summer Solstice. And that's an event where you're going to do your first ever speaking gig. So, we're going to talk about that a little bit.
I'm excited about that. That's
yeah.
Be fun.
Yeah. And you're doing the 1% challenge for self-growth.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to have fun asking you about that. We're also going to talk about some of the events coming up for AFTV5. And then we're also going to discuss something very close to my heart, which is the issue of homelessness. I think that's really big, homelessness. I'm sure even in Austin. What's been your experience with that before? We're just going to get into it a little bit.
Yeah, well, when I first moved to Austin, I was surprised to see the shelter that's downtown and the overwhelming number of people that are always hanging out around there. And it was kind of a shock to me because I hadn't really seen such a dense population, such a vivid realization of what the homeless problem really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Austin is a good place to see that because it's a small city but a big city, so it's very clear. And I don't know. I think something definitely needs to be done to provide opportunities and resources. Because not everybody has those.
Yeah, it can be shocking when you become aware of that population and how little regard we have for those people. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But let's have some fun. I met you through Kelly from Liberated Lotus Collective. I've known her for about a year, and she's always up to something. She's in the studio here today, coaching you, making sure that you stay in line a little bit.
Try to stay in line.
Right?
Yeah.
So you talk about the 1% challenge as a self journey.
Yeah.
And earlier we were talking a little bit about the difference between an intrapersonal journey, which means a journey like a community journey, right? And then the interpersonal journey, which is the journey that we go inside of ourselves. Let's start with the interpersonal journey. So you started this because I assume there's something that you wanted to change inside of you?
Yeah, I think, and it wasn't just one thing, it was really a realization over the course of a long extended period of time, but it was the realization that there wasn't just one thing about my life I wanted to shift. There was kind of this multitude, this growing number of changes that needed to be made in my life in order for me to really be the person that I would dream of being. And so it got to a point where it was so overwhelming for me to realize that, it's not just about applying myself in this one particular aspect or learning how to fix or resolve this one particular thing, but this just force upon me that made me feel as though I needed a 180-degree shift in everything that I was doing, this fundamental change in perspective. And that's what led me to begin this 1% challenge. And today it's a 100-day challenge, and I've only gone 25 days. But in that time, I've met Kelly, I've met you. Now I'm getting involved with Liberated Lotus Collective. And I have an opportunity through Kelly to present at this event. So I feel like making the conscious decision to undergo a change that I didn't really understand what the change was when I started has already, just a quarter of the way into this 100 days, provided a ton of resources and brought a ton of things into my life that are allowing me to push forward and actually manifest the change. So
awesome. I know Austin loves to think about itself as a community, and in my experience here, I definitely think about Austin as a vibrant community. being able to, I'm going to be doing some stuff with Liberated Lotus Collective too. The first event I won't be able to be at because I have a workshop in San Antonio, a writer's workshop, but I'm going to be sending some video and then sending all my energy and love to that launch. I'm so excited because, you know, like I said, I've known Kelly for a little bit of time here, and then here at the studios at AFTV5 where I got connected recently. And so much of what I do as an entrepreneur is based off of other people and is based off of building that community. And as you're right here in the beginning of in your journey, I think it's so interesting that you've already realized how important it is to kind of connect to a community. And what was it that, like, right after you started working on yourself, that just started making you think about community?
Well, I didn't really conceptualize this idea in terms of relationships. It was really
which idea?
The whole 1% challenge concept.
Okay.
I was really founded on an inward journey.
Yeah.
But I don't think it took very many days for me to. I think things just came to me. It wasn't a conscious shift into realizing I need to be a part of a community,
Right.
but it was when I made the decision that for myself, I want to be a better person. I immediately saw that better people were attracted to me, and I was attracted to better
Right.
people. And
Right.
so, and that kind of leads me to the question that I asked you earlier when we were discussing the topics for this conversation, which is, you know, is self-development inherently development of a community,
Mm-hmm.
or on the opposite end of the spectrum, is it a selfish endeavor to be focused solely on how am I going to benefit, how can I create a better life for myself, versus how can I serve others? And there's a fine line between serving yourself and serving others that I don't have the answers to that.
That's a perfect segue for kind of what I want to get into a little bit next. So I don't know if you guys heard about this, but Bernie Sanders is running. He announced that he's going to run again, you know, in his next term, for the next presidential election. And one of his speaking points right now is about the Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos. He talks about how over the course of a certain amount of time, Jeff Bezos made $275 million a day. And during that time, and right now Bezos
Really?
has, 275 for a period of time. I don't remember what it was. It was
Yeah.
like 6 months, something like that. And that his current net worth is approximately $132 billion. That's his current net worth. And he's just one example. He's currently the richest person. He's the new richest person in the world. Or is it just in the U.S.? I don't know. You guys can fact check that. Let it be known that I said I don't know. But when we think about these incredibly wealthy people, and just like your 1% challenge, there's another 1%. You know, there is the 1% of wealthy individuals, and all of our wealth is concentrated there. And what is money really, except the ability to create change? And so when you put all the change in such a small number of people's hands, what are we doing? You know, who is that being taken from, and where do these profits come from? There's however many employees in Amazon. Why is it that Jeff Bezos is able to accrue $275 million, while some of his employees are probably missing light bills and not being able to pay for certain things for their children? I don't want to go so far to say that wealth is a bad thing, because I don't think so at all. You know, I have plans to accrue my own wealth. And so this is a conversation that I think we need to have in order to find out how we can reinvest greater into our communities. In the U.S. alone, there's 564,708 people in the U.S. who are homeless. And here at AFTV5, we like to bring in some of the news from the African diaspora. The population of Nigeria is currently 186 million, and 108 million Nigerians, according to The Guardian, and I don't know exactly, our producer here, Mr. Samuel Yanthe, did caution me in, you know, using that statistic. I don't know exactly how they gather their data when they say that there are 108 million Nigerians who are technically homeless. In the article, they say that the Bureau described it was talking about housing and why there's a housing crisis. The Bureau described the 100,000 houses built yearly in the country as insufficient, adding that it is time for stakeholders to join government efforts in providing affordable houses for people by taking advantage of ongoing federal integrated staff housing, which is a program there. To continue with some statistics, in the U.S., 83,000 individuals, or 15% of the homeless population, are considered chronically homeless. And in Austin, the city we're in right now, 2,000 to 2,500 homeless people are present every night of the year. So these are some really interesting statistics. As you do your personal growth and you build your brand in the U.S., let's just talk about Austin, for example. What do you feel as if it's even possible? Or do you feel like it's too big of an issue? I think that sometimes, the homeless community can feel like it's so separate. What do you you got Sunny here, another guest from Liberated Lotus Collective just walked in. But what do you feel what do you feel about that?
It's a super complex and a super large issue.
Yeah.
And I really, what comes to mind for me in all of those and trying to connect these things is that change begins within the self, within the individual. And I think in order to make a large-scale change in the way that a society is structured, what it really takes is a whole bunch of individuals having realization, having self-realization, having awakening to who they are and how they impact the community. And I think we often look for solutions from this top-down approach where we expect, or we have some sort of ideal in our heads that there's going to be one answer and it's going to come from the top and then it's going to come from Jeff Bezos and then everything else is going to be resolved. Mm-hmm. But I feel that's kind of putting a Band-Aid, even if there was some sort of resolve, it's putting a Band-Aid and a mask on the issue. And really where the issue lies is in the aggregate data of all the individual people who make up the community of Austin, mm-hmm. making daily, small, tiny little choices that ultimately lead to the society that we create. So I'm not really sure how my 1% challenge goes into it, but I think in order for me to feel like my cup is overflowing and I can get back to a community, I first have to fill my own cup.
Yeah.
And so and I guess this does go right back into that question of the balance between self-development and community. And is the Mother Teresa approach the best thing, where just give yourself, do things for the community, mm-hmm. or is there some sort of balance in between that and the idea of make myself the next Jeff Bezos? Somewhere in there's a balance where you are motivating yourself, growing, developing who you are, and awakening to your own self-realization, and through that becoming a part of a community that where value is exchanged from those two things. So overall I think the answer is so complicated. Definitely. But it breaks down into tiny little pieces. Definitely.
And I'm definitely not someone who would agree that we can just, tax our way out of these problems. Just to quote a statistic to quote a little passage that I hear, most economists believe that it is more efficient to tax people, not companies. Taxes on companies discourage them from making investments, encourage them to move profits abroad to tax havens. There are strong arguments that lower corporate taxes would increase economic growth. And here at Influence Hour, we do love to. This is one of the reasons why I love this show and having this opportunity to actually use media and use attention to have these conversations, because that's kind of the way that we're gonna create change, if it's ever gonna happen. And this is an issue that's super close to my heart when I think about artists and entrepreneurs, and even when I think about my own artist and entrepreneur journey. I've experienced varying degrees of homelessness during my entrepreneurship journey. Not as severe as a lot of people, because honestly, I always had a place that I could go. I have multiple friends, and then I have literally, I have parents that I'm still well connected to, I think because of my own mental health. But it's something that I can sympathize with a lot, and it makes me think, what is it that we're doing when we focus so much on economic growth? What about cultural growth? What about artistic growth? Is the growth of our economy worth siphoning the life out of our culture? As a society increases in wealth, shouldn't it increase access to basic amenities? Instead of putting bars on park chairs, why don't we put water fountains and air conditioning at bus stops? Instead of banning sleeping in public parks, why don't we create a place for displaced individuals in the transit through the jungle of everyday life? Why don't we give them back a portion of their value? And I think the answer is actually super simple. We allow wealthy individuals to exploit under the guise of deserved luxury, ironically at the expense of culture. I'm of the firm belief that profit is often similar to waste, and that when business owners remove wealth from a business system, they can often actually be taking what should have been reinvested into the business. One of my favorite entrepreneurs of all time, Gary Vee, says that if you can, as a business owner, it's great. You've created a wonderful system, for creating profit, but you have a duty to, and he's actually just talking about for the success of the business, and I believe that this is true too, and I think that business owners who do this will win. And that's actually itself the motivation to do it, because you'll win if you do this. And this, what I'm saying when I say this, is reinvesting into personnel. Taking money that, instead of growth, what if that $175 million, what if he instead, and I'm sure he has plans to reinvest it. Jeff Bezos is not a dumb guy. But what if we made it known, instead of talking so much about how much he's making, what if we started really looking into what he's reinvesting? Because I'm sure he's doing some interesting things. But besides Jeff Bezos, this isn't about him today. I think it's super important to understand that it's a duty for businesses to not just create profit and take it out of the system, killing not only, I think, culture, killing not only the artistic value that a society is able to create, but they're also, in fact, destroying their own business. They're killing it. They're cannibalizing their own business for the sake of their own wealth, whatever. It's super annoying. It's kind of disgusting. I think we're gonna take a little bit of a break here because I do want to get Sunny in as the other guest. But it was really, really, really great talking to you. I hope you had fun.
Yeah.
I hope you weren't confused the entire time.
We're talking about some big issues.
I hope we're talking about some big issues.
Yeah.
I hope we're speaking to someone. I hope that we can actually create some change. I actually left out my favorite part of my little rant that I wanted to get into, which is, I think specifically, this is one thing that I would love to focus on. I'm really big on public transportation, and I would really, really, really love to see, I would love to see higher taxes on luxury vehicles that was reinvested into the public transportation system. I think there should be a water fountain at every single public transportation system. And I'm not talking about crazy stuff here. I'm not asking for there to be bottles of Evian water at each one of these things. I'm talking about a water fountain, things that we've had for the last 100 years. And I think that if we can tax the Mercedes makes Maybach, don't they? Right? Mercedes makes Maybach. Okay, if we can tax Mercedes, if we can tax Lexus, if we can tax Tesla, and I love Tesla, so if I'm saying this, that I really believe it. If we can tax some of these luxury car companies and reinvest into water fountains at public transportation, if we can have overhangs on all bus stops, why would people take the bus when they have air conditioning in their car? Obviously, you're setting up a system where the healthier option isn't even an option. Who's going to stand outside in 100-degree weather waiting for the bus? So this is why I wanted to take a break, because it's getting fun. It's getting fun. But anyway, so we'll do that, and then we'll come back with Sunny. Thank you so much, Gavin. And thank you to Liberated Lotus Collective for having it, and then of course thank you to AFTV for getting us in here. And once again, I'm your host, Kenyo, and we'll be right back.
Thanks.
Thanks.